This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 602 for July 30th, 2021. Coming up on today's show, Loving an Addict. Hello, my fantabulous Polyweekly listeners. Happy to be here. I'm your host, Minx. My co-host, as usual today, is Lustyguy.
Happy and lucky to be here, as always. Hello, everybody.
And this is your warning. This is an adult show about really lascivious things like honesty and communication about sex and relationships. If you're under 18, please stop listening and visit scarletteen.com. And I actually don't have too much for the host chat section this morning. Bored.
Just a little bit of happy news that we are right back into production and struggling mightily to get back on schedule.
Trying so hard to be a good podcaster. You just kind of go through periods where none of the topics work, you're not feeling it, but I am feeling it. I have been for the last month or two, and so really excited about some new stuff coming down the pipe.
And the ability to get it out on schedule. You don't know how much being on schedule makes Minx happy.
It really does, and thanks so much to our new editor, Cody, for editing the episodes. Makes it so much easier.
Strongly seconded. Thank you, Cody. Let's have a little talk about credibility, history, and how the two should intersect when we talk about the left and the right in the U.S. The U.S. has a fine history of a number of clear-cut A or B decision points, where the left said A and the right said B. Now note that I'm not talking about Democrats and Republicans. For all that the Republicans are firmly right and the Democrats are left of them now, if they aren't really firmly left.
More center.
Right center, if you want to go on a world scale. That's besides the point. That hasn't always been the case. You go back far enough, and the Republicans were on the left, and the Democrats were on the right. No, I'm talking about the core political philosophies that define U.S. conservatives and U.S. liberals. U.S. conservatives generally base their position on calls to authority, often the Bible, respect for institutional power, and a belief that things were better in the past. Liberals base their position on notions of individual liberty, respect for civil rights, and a belief that things will be better in the future. Now, over time, these different groups have lined up over fault line over fault line. Just start at the very beginning. We talk about the revolution like everybody was together, but there were, in fact, lots of conservative loyalists who did not join the revolution. It was the conservatives who wanted slavery to continue while the liberals opposed it. Conservatives opposed expanding the voting franchise beyond white men with property at every step of the way, while liberals fought to include women, black folk, and eventually everyone over 18 years old. And it goes on. Gay marriage, ending the drug war, the lack of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, the dangers of smoking tobacco and secondhand smoke, the direct election of U.S. senators, interracial marriage, Jim Crow, ending the Vietnam War, climate change, and even using seatbelts in cars. In every case, we faced an A-B decision. In every case, over time, the general consensus has grown that there was a clear preferred choice between the two. Maintaining Jim Crow was clearly much worse than ending it. Driving without seatbelts are clearly much worse than driving with seatbelts. And yes, secondhand smoke is a health problem. Now, in every case, it was the conservatives championing the position we now know to be flawed. I've had this discussion with my conservative friends many times, challenging them to come up with the examples of such a decision point where we all agree now that the liberals got it wrong and the conservatives got it right. So far, the only one they've been able to come up with is prohibition. And you know what?
Yeah, right.
No, it's true. It was the liberals that drove that one through, and they had been proven to be wrong in so doing over time. There you go. But the overwhelming pattern is clear. Conservatives aren't bothered by reality. They will adopt any position so long as it helps their efforts to gain political power. In the rough and tumble of our competitive political system, that can be an advantage. In the face of the realities of governance, where decisions have life and death effects, it is less so. Over 500,000 Iraqi citizens are dead because conservatives got enough of us to believe Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, while liberals were saying that wasn't so. The world is burning after the conservatives have spent years denying climate change, while the liberals pointed it out. This track record should have consequences. There ought to be a reduction in credibility on the conservative side of U.S. politics. It should matter that decades, centuries of history have shown the weakness of the core underpinnings of conservatism. It is a philosophy shown to be prone to incorrect conclusions, and that should matter. So the next time you're wondering about what side of any given political debate to adopt, consider the track record of the folk advocating for each side. If they're among those who think the 2020 election was stolen, say, you can reasonably assume they have a long track record of being wrong. And, as we all know, past behavior is the best predictor of future performance. It's not perfect, but it's the best we got. As such, if the conservatives are saying A, you're starting off in the right direction to assume B until proven otherwise. That pattern has been well established at this point in U.S. history.
If you have questions, comments, or feedback, call 802-505-POLY or email polyweekly@gmail.com and attach an MP3 file with your questions or comments. To book us or anything that involves a calendar, please email lustyguy@polyweekly.com. For our topic this week, I don't think I've ever done this before, but I think I would like to put a content warning on our topic this week. We will be talking about addiction, and there's a little violence in there too, plus some enabling. So if that's not something that you want to hear, you want to fast forward to the next segment, which is the feedback segment. Okay, now that we've given that warning, this week's letter is a little bit long, and normally I would summarize, but there are some rather important details in there, so just bear with me for the contents of the letter. Our listener writes, I'm new to poly. My husband and I have been together since high school, 17 years, married for 7, swinging for 8. We recently, 7 months ago, opened up to solo play meets after only having done group play and threesomes. My husband's encouraging me to do the solo thing for years with little interest in doing so himself. Fast forward. She meets someone, the husband and a couple, online, and at first didn't say anything, but then writes, it was all kinds of messy as this guy is a recovering alcoholic and my husband was so concerned about my safety as at the time he was in the middle of a relapse. That would be the new interest, not the husband. I started seeing N, the new interest, in February casually for sex dates, and the feelings only escalated. In March, he was attacked in his home when I went to visit, and my husband's fears for my safety came to life. My husband asked me to stop seeing N, and against everything in my gut, I went along with this and wrote a 4-page letter and start to read it over the phone. N was in an alcohol-induced psychosis and was unable to absorb anything I said. The next day, he called me and was crying, saying he thought this was the end, that he was dying. He sobbed and told me he loved me 10 times before hanging up. I was devastated. Did I just cut someone out of my life that was dying and needed as much love and care around them as possible? I told my husband and said I needed to be there as a support over the phone, which I did. I worked tirelessly to get N hospitalized as he refused treatment. Fast forward, he was hospitalized and detoxed and came out of the hospital mid-April. I had to go to his town for a haircut and various things, so I went down to visit with the permission of my husband. It started to become a thing again, and my husband knew and outed me to some friends as being poly. I thought he was okay with it. It started to become a Friday ritual. Last Tuesday was N's birthday, and I went down to see him without asking my husband as he was in a shitty mood, and I didn't want him to think, while he's at work, that I get to go have fun. I was purely trying to be considerate of his feelings. It seems this was the worst thing I could ever have done. He told me he's only tolerating my relationship with N, and that each time I see him, it's a kick in the guts. He doesn't understand my relationship with N and feels he's not enough for me. He says he's just waiting for me to tell him I'm leaving. This is not the case. I love both of them in different ways, and I want to make things work. I hate having to ask permission to see N, and I want to respect my husband and show him that he matters. How do you go forward when your husband hates the new relationship that makes you happy? I'm so incredibly happy when I'm with N and don't want to lose him or our relationship. Now, Lusty Guy, I'm tossing this to you because you have a long history of dealing with family members, friends, and even partners who are in the throes of addiction, and I do not.
Yeah, let me start out by just saying that it's true. I grew up the son of an addict, and I have had friends who have been, and at the same time, in psychotic episodes and addicts in heavy use periods, and some of whom have made it and some of whom have not over the years. So there are pluses and minuses to that. One is that I can really kind of understand where you're at. Two is that because I've been there, I think I understand it, and that is not always right. You're going to get the solutions that have worked for me. And, the saying, when you have only hammers, the world looks to be full of nails. I think I have more than hammers in my toolbox, but I only have so many tools that have worked when dealing with addicts. And when that's all you got, you think it will always work. So let me start out by saying my heart really goes out to you. You are in an enormously difficult position right now, having fallen in love with an addict who's actively using. That means inherently you want something from that addict who's inherently using. You want their sobriety. You want their happiness. You want their time. You want their attention. You want their consideration. Wanting something from an addict who's actively using is a one-way path to hell. They are not capable of giving anything to anyone else, whether it's a mother who can't love their child, a friend who can't be there for other friends, or a lover who can't really fulfill a relationship. Right now, In doesn't really have a very good relationship with In. They're not going to be able to build one with anyone else. But I want to be really careful here that it doesn't look like I'm just piling on the addict. One of the barometers that we have for whether or not a relationship is a positive thing in someone's life is to check and see if the presence of it is promoting behavior that reflects the best all the members can be. Are you doing things that you're proud of in this relationship or because of this relationship? And as I look at your letter, I don't think any of you can say you're doing things you're proud of right now. When you say, for example, you went to visit In and you thought your husband was okay with it, you should have known. It shouldn't have been a surprise. Your husband outing you to friends, that shouldn't happen. That's not great by any stretch. The notion that you went down without telling your husband that you were going to see In because you thought it was a good thing and your husband was at work and you were that's, I'm afraid, bullshit. That is not a sign of a good, healthy behavior. I don't think what you're doing right now at any level is promoting better versions of yourselves. Now, I'm not big on the permission model of relationships. I think that's for children, frankly, and I think adults reasonably bristle under it. Having said that, I think your husband's right. In is not capable of having a relationship right now. And when you say, have I just cut someone out of my life that was dying and needed as much love and care around them as possible? I really understand that question. So I was having this conversation with my brilliant friend while he was sober. And he said to me, why is it, do you figure, that when addicts need friends the most, when they've bottomed out, when everything's the most terrible for them, there are no friends left and there are no family left? And I thought about it for a little while. And then he answered his own question. He said, I'll tell you why. It's because if you still had friends left, you'd never bottom out. You have to lose all your friends and family before things will get bad enough that you will care enough about yourself that you will bottom out and get serious about your sobriety. So while you think it is a case of you cutting someone out of your life when they are dying and needing as much love and care around them as possible, what you are really doing is furthering the time it will take for them to get sober. The more you fight to get them into the hospital, for example, the more you stick around, the more you will delay the bottoming out process. Now, every addict is different. Some of them bottom out and by so doing might actually physically try to kill some of their family, as has happened in mine. Some of them bottom out just because they get a speeding ticket. It's all over the board. But most of the time have to go through such a severe bottoming out process that they've lost all their friends. Everybody has said, I cannot be in the way of your freight train, and stepped off the tracks. And that eventually helps them get a hold of it. It helps them bottom out. So you're not really helping by sticking around and providing love and support. The odds are really good. You're just delaying that bottoming out process. But even that analysis has this error. It's not about your effects on him. It's not about whether or not he's going to kill himself after you break up with him. It's not about whether or not he's ever going to be sober. It's not about anything about him. It's about you. What has to come first is your health, your safety, and your mental well-being. And this relationship, I don't think, is contributing to those things. When you say you were in the house while he was attacked, there's a lot of room for what the fuck in that thing. I got a lot of questions about that.
Yeah.
Who did the attacking? Why were you there that you did or didn't get hurt? Were the police involved? Here's the thing. Studies have shown that, for example, gun violence, being shot, the most likely thing to predict whether or not you'll be shot is whether or not you know someone who's been shot. It's almost like a virus that moves through the community. Simply being in a part of someone's life where that kind of violence happens means you're more likely to experience it. While I'm talking about these things and questions I have, when you first introduced in as part of a couple. You never mentioned his wife again. What the hell happened
or husband.
to her? Or husband. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. My presumption there. What the hell happened to them? Why are they not sticking around in? Or are they? Why are they not mentioned anymore? I don't know what's going on there, but I would guess their response to the situation might be something you could learn from. So here's the thing. It's not easy. It's hell. Loving an addict is hell. You've got to put yourself first, not them. While addicts are actively using, almost everybody who knows anything about them will tell you, you really can't start a relationship with one. Let them get clean and sober for a while. Let them get in recovery. Let them get a handle on things, and that's great. While they're actively using, they're just really not capable of it. And while you're having a relationship based on permission models, and when you're surprised by each other's reactions, and when you've spun up to this point of lack of communication, you're not your best self either. You're probably not really ready for it either. So I would say, take a step back, put yourself, your health, and your safety first. Get things solid so that you're the best you that you can be. And then work on adding people to the mix. People that, if they are addicts who are firmly in recovery. And my gosh, my heart goes out to you. It's a hard situation.
I don't really think I can add too much to that. I had a lot of thoughts that I was going to share, but I think you pretty much nailed it.
I will add this. Consider some professional counseling as well. I just looked at my notes and that had fallen out of this barrage of bullshit from my mouth. But do strongly consider some professional counseling for you. This is an enormously difficult situation, and the echoes of it will likely last for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not your first time at this rodeo. If it is, welcome to it. If it's not, but get some counseling.
And it might not be a bad idea to maybe do some marriage counseling as well. I'm not sure if the permission-based model stemmed from just coming out of swinging and that's what you decided that you would do, or if it's simply because of the situation with N and your husband's reluctance, quite reasonably, to trust N and his worry for your safety around him. But it might not be a bad idea because I see some damaged trust in your marriage as well. And that's probably going to take a little bit of work to get over as well.
I think that's very true.
And our feedback this week, I get to contribute something here since Lusty Guy did all the heavy lifting for that one. Thank you. This is from Kate, who wrote, I stumbled across your podcast a few months ago, and I've enjoyed listening to all your episodes. This may be way out of date, but there was an episode several years ago, 485, Do I End My Marriage Over Untried Poly?, where a listener wanted to know what to call their feelings for their metamor, which were more than compersion but not really a crush. In the aromantic community, we have a term called squish that might fit. There are no romantic feelings like a crush, but you still feel drawn to the person in a platonic kind of way. Hope that sheds some light on the question, or maybe you've already heard about it. Keep up the good work, Kate. It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by Fubbly Polyamorists everywhere.
And today's Happy Poly Moment comes in from JM from Montana. I began listening to your podcast the last week in December of 2018. I started at the very beginning, and I am all the way current.
Wow.
You need a badge.
That's a lot. That's 600 episodes.
We should make a badge.
We should make a badge.
Yeah. I found a great many of the episodes enlightening, engaging, and entertaining. This podcast helped me a great deal in my poly relationships. I am currently in my first poly relationship, a V with my partner, JB, he, and my metamor, JR, she. I have had one other outside relationship with D.S, he, not to be confused with capital D/S.
Dominance and submission.
Right.
Not that.
Not that. We in the V have all been together since early 2016 and cohabitating since mid-2017. Now JB is engaged to both myself and my metamor, and I entertain fantasies of someday both marriages being legally recognized at the same time, especially in light of the progress made in the state of Massachusetts in recent months.
That's true. Yeah, we've been covering that.
Thank you for all the amazing work that you and Lusty Guy have put into this glorious resource for the community and those who are curious about poly as well. You are awesome, and I hope you keep up this wonderful podcast for many more years to come. Sincerely, JM from Montana. P.S. If you read this on the air, please include that we are from Montana, since I think it's important for folks to remember that poly isn't just for people who live in big cities. There are poly people in the sticks.
Hello to all the folks in the sticks of Montana.
Yeah, you guys can't see it, but she's doing the British royalty car wave while she says that.
I'm doing the queen wave.
The queen wave. I will say that it's obvious our letter writers are very, very quick studies. They've learned that if they just throw out enough compliments, their letter is going to get read as long as they tell us we're... And of course, once you say that, you're obviously smart enough that we have to read your letter.
We read criticism on the air as well.
Yeah, but only when it also says how great we are.
I think that's just because our listeners are super great at providing compliment sandwiches with their feedback.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Just great communicators.
Wise. It means that we actually listen.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, speaking of listening, thank you for listening. Thanks to our polyweekly playmates for their donations this week. We are a free resource. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people listen to 600 episodes over 2 years and navigate their introduction to and continued success with polyamory. And your donations keep the podcast free for everybody, both inside and outside the community. It is always a pleasure to address your issues, even the really tricky and painful ones like this. Thank you for those who have the courage to write in, and thank you folks for listening and donating. And remember, it's not all about the sex.